welcome to the Joy of Cooking podcast. Each week, we set the table for a discussion about recipes and stories from the authors of Joy of Cooking cookbook, kitchen victories and misadventures, and most importantly, what we are cooking and eating right now. We're glad you've joined us at the table today. I'm Sarah Marshall, filling in for Shannon. I am a lover of small farms, tinned fish, and pickles.
I'm Megan Scott, co-author of the 2019 Joy of Cooking. I'm a food editor by day and avoider of dish duty by night, and my body is composed of about 85% citrus fruits right now.
That's my fault. I'm John Becker, fourth generation co-author and steward of The Joy of Cooking, America's oldest family-run cookbook. I'm in my candying citrus phase of seasonal coping, and sometimes I make uncomfortably spicy salsa.
Tell us about your spicy salsa. What did you do?
Well, it's actually came about because of the candying of the citrus. I bought too many sour oranges for like a batch of marmalade, and so I juiced the rest of them, and I ended up making a habanero citrus hot sauce. It's actually from the book, and yeah, I made it too spicy. Or maybe it's just where I'm at right now. Maybe I'm more sensitive than usual. I don't know.
A little tender. Feeling a little tender. Oh.
Why didn't you bring it here?
Yeah, why didn't you bring it?
I mean, I would have guzzled it.
Well, I can go get it right now. It's fine.
Yes. No, you have to stay here.
Dang it.
So you made it while I was gone this weekend.
Right. Made that, and also a fried serrano salsa that was also too spicy. And I blame that on the supermarket where I got these serranos because they were gigantic. And I don't know. I mean, I probably should have bit into one just to test it to see. But
Nah.
yeah, no. I mean,
Live dangerously.
sure. That.
Live deliciously.
Yeah, fried serrano salsa, Roberto Santabanez's recipe. Very good. Definitely like one of our standbys.
Yeah, it's from his book, Truly Mexican.
That's right.
Can you describe how the salsa is made? Because it's really interesting and it's so good. We make it all the time.
You just have, trim the stems and, what is that? What is the thing around the stem? It has a fun name.
Is it a calyx?
Yes. Yeah. I trim the calyx. Yeah, I guess you don't have to. Stem and calyx come off of each of the serranos. You leave them whole and you heat up some, I use vegetable oil. I think he calls for like a mild olive oil, which we don't have mild olive oil around ever. So yeah, vegetable oil, you fry them until they get a little bit blistered on all sides. And then you put them in a blender, and then you put in a quarter cup of diced onion into the oil, and you let that kind of get a little bit brown around the edges. And then you put it in the blender, a little bit of salt. I think it's a quarter cup of water. And then you're supposed to add the frying oil after it cools down. But I generally just add, I guess I'm a wasteful person, but I'll just, I don't have the patience for that. I want the salsa now. So I just add maybe a little bit less than a quarter cup of olive oil to that.
Okay. Fresh oil.
Yeah, fresh
Instead
oil.
of using the frying oil.
Right. This time I used some chicken bouillon powder, which was a good decision.
That's a good call.
That was a good call.
Do you have any leftover? Is there any leftover?
Yeah,
I missed it.
Yeah, there's some.
Okay.
So yeah, I put way too much of it on some tostadas. Yeah, ouch.
What about you, Sarah? Did you cook anything fun this week, and do you eat anything memorable?
Well, I did. I cooked a few things. So I was going out of town, so I make my daughter this almond cake that I just have the recipe memorized because it's what she likes to eat for breakfast. So it's just 2 cups of almond flour, 1 cup of sugar, 4 eggs, and you whisk the eggs till they're really, 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 really fluffy. And then you just put it all in with a little almond extract and vanilla, and then you dust it with powdered sugar. And she probably eats that more than anything.
Yeah.
So, and I always make it kind of when I'm leaving so that while I'm gone, she has something to eat that, reminds her of me, and she feels like good having this breakfast in the morning. So I made that before I was going out of town, and then we were at the beach together. So my assigned thing to make was chips and dips, which is like my favorite thing to make. So I always bring lots of like pickly things and hot sauces to make those chips and dips. So I never really like go recipe, I'm just like, oh, I'm going to make a salmon dip. So I used smoked salmon that my friend had caught and smoked. So just did some like dill and cream cheese and then our habanero curry hot sauce. So that was rad with with pickles, of course. And
It was very good.
peppers,
I
yeah.
loved the chunks of pickle in there. That was delicious.
Yeah, I mean, like, how can you go wrong with like pieces of pickle and smoky salmon and dill and herbs? You know, it was like just great. You know, tomatoes, of course, are not in season, but to make them taste good, I just like soak them in hot sauce, and so I did that. I did like tomatoes with basil and hot sauce and pickled peppers and just pita chips. So that was my like quick and easy, but it like got us through to the next meal. But then there was like more to eat all throughout the weekend. You know, I made a lot, and then that's it. That's my quick and easy chip and dip recipes.
I love a dip.
I'll have to remember that strategy. Just putting tomatoes in
Hot sauce.
It kind of makes it so that it's like it doesn't matter that they don't taste like anything. You know?
Sure.
Yeah. I have been eating a bunch of mandarin quats because they're in season right now, and they're my favorite citrus fruit in the whole world. And so I'm just feasting on them as long as I can get them. And they're like nature's sour candy. They're like kumquats in that the peel is sweet and the inside is sour, but they're a little bit bigger. Like I'd say they're like ping pong ball size ish. Would you say?
Oh, they're bigger.
Okay.
It's
well,
it's a
they
teardrop.
vary.
It's a teardrop shape, so
Yeah.
you could fit a ping pong ball inside for sure.
I've actually never played ping pong, so I don't even know. How
It's
big
like if
that
a
is.
ping pong ball wore a little cone hat.
Yeah, there you go.
But they're nice and sour and really juicy, and I just can't get enough of them this time of year.
Yeah, I tried candying some using Camilla Wynn's recipe, author of a recently released book called Nature's Candy. Yeah, I should have brought those, but they turned out pretty good. You know, it's kind of a multi-day thing where you just keep on adding more sugar and you bring it up to a little simmer for 10 minutes each day. The drying, I don't know. There's an optional treatment that you can do to, you know, allow the fruit to keep its shape better. Camilla recommends pickling lime, but yeah, it was just like a bridge too far. So maybe next time. Also, alum, I guess, is another option. So yeah,
Okay.
maybe try both.
Do you have any plans for what you're going to do with now that we have the candied fruit? What are we going to do with it?
Well, I have been eating them.
You've just been eating it.
It's a very small batch,
Yeah.
so there's not a ton of like candied mandarin quad to get rid of.
I might make a pound cake or something. I feel like, or an olive oil cake and put some in there, like dice them up and put it in there. That sounds good to me.
Maybe liquor them up with some orange stuff, some dry curacao.
Yeah. So this week's guest is our dear friend, Nicole Kondra. She is professionally trained. She went to culinary school. However, she's not currently working in food, but one of our goals for the show was to have friends on who are not necessarily pro cooks or working in food right now, because we just love talking to home cooks about what they're making. And we think that you can learn a lot from home cooks because they're just in the weeds every day in their little kitchens and with their imperfect setups and limitations, like being limited in time. Or I feel like you learn more that way sometimes than you do when you have all of the things you could ever want. So all of that is to say, Nicole, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So Nicole tested recipes for our 2019 edition. Nicole, do you have any idea how many recipes you ended up testing, like rough ballpark?
I think that you guys put 20 per week in my Evernote file.
God, that sounds like so many now that you say that.
And I was 2 days a week, and I felt like I never met my quota.
Well, that was too many recipes a week.
I was also working as a personal chef at the time, as well as cooking for my then husband and I at night. And it was a lot of cooking. It was a lot. If I had to do the math, I did that for at least, I think it was like 2 years, right?
Yeah,
And there
you
was-
did it for a
part
while.
of that was actually full time every day. So my externship actually for culinary school was with The Joy of Cooking, and so that was my Monday through Friday grind. Wild time.
Agreed.
Would you shop? How would you grocery shop? Like, did you try to get everything on one day for the week, or would you spread it out?
Well, I remember that you would dump the recipes for the week, and then I could kind of pick and choose how I wanted to break that up. But make a giant master shopping list, and then do a big shop. I remember at the time, I feel like curbside pickup for groceries was kind of just becoming a thing pre-pandemic. So I would try to do that as much as possible. However, there were always things that I would forget, and I would be in the middle of testing a recipe and go, "Oh my God, I'm out of baking soda," "Oh my God, I'm out of salt. How could I be out of salt?" And then have to, turn everything off, kennel my dog, pack up, go to the store, try to make sure I didn't forget anything else. So there were a lot of, it was a lot of information, and intentions were to get everything in one go to save time, but there were often last minute things that had to get picked up. So
Yeah, it's hard to grocery shop perfectly.
Yeah, no, that sounds very familiar.
I still have a problem with this.
Yeah.
That's really reassuring. I felt like I was really dropping the ball.
No.
Yeah, we're just lucky to actually have a grocery store nearby these days.
Yeah, when we first started recipe testing, we were living in East Tennessee, like in the middle of
God,
nowhere.
I can't even imagine.
So we did what you did, which is try to make a list of everything you need so that you don't have to go, because the grocery store was 45 minutes to an hour
a whole day.
away. It was a whole day, yeah. But we would forget stuff all the time, even with the best intentions and like thinking we were doing such a great job. But yeah, we forgot stuff all the time.
I'm trying to remember what our contingency was. I feel like we just
We would just table that
next
recipe.
week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully everything will keep.
I did the same thing, but I was traveling to our commercial kitchen because I was trying to like run the sauce business while I was writing the cookbook. So I had people that were coming in and testing the recipes in the commercial kitchen while I was making hot sauce, which was complete chaos.
Yeah.
But I had this traveling like makeup kit that I filled with all these different spices so that like I would just have everything that I thought that I would need. And I still have it. It's kind of rad because instead of it being filled with makeup, it's all these tiny spice jars.
Like a tiffin.
But it's like huge. It like folds out.
Amazing.
Like you remember, did you guys come from a time where they had caboodles? Like
Yes.
it's like
I
that.
remember that.
It was just like this makeup kit, like in the 80s. It's like that, but it's like it looks like a film case. So I would just be like, okay, I got my kit, and it would be like, I would need all these things to make all these pickles. So it's like full of like mustard seeds and black peppercorns and all this stuff, but little tiny jars. It made it so I didn't need so many things, but it was just like a funny little thing that now I'm like, okay, I have my little spice kit on the go.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How big are we talking?
It's pretty big. It's like I don't know measurements. Like okay, let's say 12 by 12 by 12.
Kind of
Okay.
like a case a makeup artist would use.
Yeah, but it's for
Tackle
spices.
box, maybe.
Yeah.
It's pretty rad.
I'm picturing tackle box.
Yeah, it's
I like that idea.
It's a tackle box, but fancy. It's like velvet lined.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Did you put cool stickers on it or something?
No, it's just like a cool.
It just is awesome on its own.
Yeah, it's just awesome. I mean, I wish I'm gonna like have to post a picture of
Yeah,
it
you
so
will.
people know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
I'm sure you look very mysterious carrying it around. It's like a spy case. Like, what's
What's in there? What's she got in there?
My spice kit.
$100 bills.
Nicole, can you tell listeners a little bit about yourself and like what you do for a living?
Yeah, so most of my career has actually been working with families as a nanny. I've always worked with kids in some capacity, but it's evolved over the years, and now I work with a family. I'm with a family full time, and I started off as their nanny, and then now the kids are growing, they're older, they're in school, and a lot of my job is to just sort of jump in wherever they need me, and so I'm pretty flexible, but I will say that having a culinary school degree and the Joy of Cooking experience on my resume has been really good for me in this way. And I end up working with these families who need a lot of support cooking. So, and who doesn't? I wish I had a me. I say this all the time. But I do, I'm there to sort of do whatever they need, but a lot of my job is actually cooking. And it's really nice to be back in that realm again in a very low pressure way. For example, on Mondays, I get there in the morning, I kind of help with the morning routine, get the kids off to school, and then I shop for the week. I cook. Sometimes I plan the recipe. Sometimes they have ideas for what they would like. And I sort of just meal prep for them for the week. And then I have a lot of freedom. If I do want to try something new, I can say, hey, I've had a craving for this. What about you guys? Or, hey, I really like this. Do you like this? Often they don't. And working with a young family that has young children, it's a little bit like being a short order cook as well, which I know anybody with kids can relate. So it's a lot of, I'll make this for mom and dad. and I maybe prep some plain pasta and some other carbs for the kids and, cut fruit and things like that. So it's nice because every day is different and there's just enough kind of creative freedom to kind of keep me interested, I guess.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes it's really nice to cook for other people because you don't have, like when you're just cooking for yourself, it can feel a little more limiting. Like, oh, well, I only need, it's just the two of us. I don't need to cook that much of this thing, or I can't eat a whole lasagna or whatever. Do you feel like it's a little more freeing to cook for other people in that way?
I think, I could talk about that topic for hours. We could do a whole podcast on just what it's like to cook for yourself compared to cooking for others. But I think what I realized when I was in culinary school, I started culinary school knowing that I never actually wanted to set foot in a restaurant other than out of curiosity. That life was never for me. I really like to cook because I really like to take care of people. And that's why I also take care of children. And getting to do that for an entire family feels really nice for me. And so I get to cook for a very small group of people, 4 people, and sometimes their friends or their family. And, that's what satisfies my soul more than the food part of it. So I love doing that. I will say, like on Mondays, my big cook day, the last thing I want to do is go home and cook in my little apartment kitchen with no dishwasher, one outlet, But I get to come in with ideas when I do feel inspired, and when I don't, they're just grateful to be fed and to have food on the table for their kids and for them.
Awesome. No, that's such a special thing to have somebody make food for you. Every time someone cooks for me, I'm just really stoked to eat whatever it is.
I feel really lucky that I get to do that and that I get to do that for people who, I remember when I started cooking for them, because initially I was just doing childcare, but when my role transitioned into more of this kind of hybrid position, I remember making a meal and one of my employers, the mom of this family, said, I just feel so loved right now. And I think about that pretty much every time I cook for them. That is kind of my driving force. And that's great for me. I am divorced. I don't have my own kids. And so it scratches, I think, kind of a maternal itch that I'm very grateful that I have an outlet for.
Yeah, because I can relate to that too, because there are a lot of problems that crop up in the world and, in families, and you can't fix all of those problems, but you can always cook somebody dinner.
Everybody always needs to eat.
Yeah, people need to eat. So
and the harder the day, the better a good meal feels to sit down to, or even just to eat over the sink, or on the way out the door. I really enjoy that aspect of what I do.
Cool. We are going to move into our tasting segment. Usually we taste something on the show that is related to the topic. However, this week's topic is casseroles. I did not want to make a casserole today. So we decided to prepare our recipe of the week. So last week we started a series where each week we choose a recipe. We invite folks to make it along with us. Last week's recipe was the olive salad from the Muffalatta recipe, which is in the sandwich chapter. So it's like a recipe embedded inside of a recipe, but it's this really beautiful, colorful, and delicious olive salad. John, can you talk about what's in it since you made it?
Sure. The Muffalatta recipe was added in the 1997 edition. And, after we tested it, I just felt like the olive salad just needed a few tweaks. And so, it's got, I'm not sure if we call specifically for Castelvetrano olives now that I'm thinking about it.
I think it just says green.
It says green olives. And I think a lot of recipes will call for pimento stuffed green olives. But yeah, the Sicilian green olives, will plussed up a little. Mostly that, then some calamatas, and then some chopped up giardiniera. And you can use pepperoncini or you can use pickled jalapenos. I decided on the jalapenos because it's better that way.
Because you like spicy?
Well, within reason. Yeah, capers. There's a roasted red pepper in there.
Oregano?
And then, some really nice dried oregano. I think it's from Well Spent Market. They have really good oregano there. So, that and, let's see, red wine vinegar and olive oil. And I feel like that's it. Mm-hmm. Oh, and salt, obviously, to taste. And garlic, fresh garlic. God.
And Nicole, you were saying before we started recording, the Muffalatta recipe might have been the first recipe you tested for Joy.
I think that it was. I was saying before we started recording, it's a sandwich I think about often. Sandwiches are my favorite food. And this has all of the things I love in a sandwich. It's salty, it's briny. When you make it with, the full sandwich, it's meaty.
It's a massive sandwich.
And you make it with a huge bowl of bread and you cut it into these wedges, and it's just, it's the perfect food.
We're sampling the olive salad on some delicious sourdough bread with some ricotta and a little drizzle of olio nuovo. So very fresh, green, grassy tasting olive oil.
I'm, of course, sad that Shannon's not here, but usually I don't get to taste the things and I don't get to talk about them. So I'm like super stoked because olives are my favorite. So this was a good day for her to not be here.
We miss you, Shannon.
Yeah, I was trying to decide how to serve the olive salad aside from just eating it straight from the container, which, it's good if you do that. But yeah, I tried this out over when you were gone, and it seemed pretty.
I feel like it would be delicious just mixed with some pasta. I mean, that's very simple, but
No, it would be perfect with pasta and maybe if you wanted to add some protein, add a little tuna.
Yeah.
Olive oil packed tuna or something like that.
absolutely. There's really good stuff in the glass jar.
I was checking out recipes that use olive salad, aside from Muffalatta, on Eat Your Books, which is a fantastic website / resource. Highly recommend checking it out. There's a lot of innovation in the olive salad space.
Did anything stick out?
The deviled eggs seemed okay.
Wait, deviled egg, putting eggs in olive salad or putting the olive salad in deviled eggs?
Into the deviled egg, yeah.
Okay.
Or I think it was like a topping type thing. A lot of the recipes that I saw, they were trying to incorporate all of the elements of the muffaletta into whatever it was.
Oh, I see.
Which I think is maybe a little too ambitious. But there was a muffaletta dips. There was at least a few muffaletta dips. But yeah, it's a versatile, salad. You could do a lot with it.
And for our listeners, Eat Your Books is a website where you can, for a very reasonable amount of money, you can go and create your own basically virtual library where you enter the names of all the cookbooks you have. And then you can search for recipe names, you can search for ingredients, and then it will tell you exactly what books you have that say have a eggplant recipe in them, since our whole podcast is about eggplant. But it's a super helpful resource, especially if you have a lot of cookbooks and you don't have time to flip around through them and you just want to find something quickly. It's a really great thing to have.
And they also cover a lot of magazines and food websites as well.
Does it spit out a recipe for you, or does it tell you on page 317?
Exactly.
It'll give you an ingredient list, which is, not with quantities, but
So what you have.
in order to filter by ingredient, they have to. I think it's a mostly volunteer situation. Just members of the Eat Your Books community will enter all of that information for a cookbook. There, I don't know. I think some people might just be going through their cookbooks and doing that.
Awesome. I'll have to check
Thank
that
you
out.
to them.
That's a lot of work.
it's a ton of
a lot of work.
I think if Shannon was here, she would say that she would use this on grilled cheese. She would make a grilled cheese with it.
Oh, that would be so.
And I think I would do my daughter loves olives and would love this. I would do kind of like a chicken piccata, sauteed chicken with it, and she'd be stoked on it.
Yeah, that sounds delicious.
I was thinking even just as a topping on some salmon or just whatever protein you have, but just kind of a way to change it up. Feels like
it would be
really
good for grilled
cold the
fish
next day too.
Oh, yeah.
For picnic food or your lunch that you don't have a refrigerator to keep things in, or
Nicole, when you're testing a recipe like this, do you ever feel afraid to be I think it needs this? Do you feel like they know more than me, and so how can I say that it needs more salt or whatever? Because that's what I feel like.
So when I started testing, it's funny that you say salt, because I didn't know that, and maybe this isn't common knowledge. I feel like I'm seeing this referenced in recipes more, but the diamond kosher salts that the quantity is different from, like your regular standard table salt. And so every single recipe, I was like, I had to double the salt. And I knew that you guys had already tested the recipes yourself before you sent them to me. And I was kind of next in line. And I mean, literally everything, I was like, I think the only note I have is that I need to double the salt. And, we used Diamond Kosher in culinary school, but nobody ever stopped to explain that the reason why we use that is because it makes it harder to oversalt your food. Mm-hmm. So, there was a little bit of an element of that. One thing I really appreciated about the approach that you guys took was that you didn't want this tested in kind of an immaculate test kitchen situation. And I was testing in my 1947 kitchen with my 1976 electric stove that broke multiple times throughout the testing process. No dishwasher, no garbage disposal, very small kitchen. And
I don't remember the failures. Did like the elements quit or?
Yeah, I think I probably shielded you guys from a little bit of that information. But a lot of it was intermittent. It would work and then it wouldn't work. And then I would maybe switch to a different kind of recipe for a while.
Oh, that's fine.
But yeah, there were definitely some real kitchen challenges. Mm-hmm. But that is also, I think, kind of what has also made me such a fangirl of The Joy of Cooking, is because I know that these were tested in real kitchens and replicable by ordinary people at home cooking.
Yeah, that was really important to us when we were talking about how we wanted to have all the recipes tested. And we think it just makes it better. It kind of stress tests the recipe because you can't, like, we couldn't control what your kitchen was like.
Right.
And we weren't going to outfit it with all the latest appliances or anything. So
or even getting just an appliance.
Feedback, yeah, exactly. Right. Getting feedback that's like, maybe this took 10 minutes longer in my oven, which maybe it was just your oven, but that tells us, okay, maybe we need to include like a range so that depending on the oven, people know to check a little early, but it might take this long,
Right. It was a really good extension of my education too, especially because I was doing this as my externship initially. And, I remember having a collection of different thermometers. I think I had borrowed a probe thermometer from you and a thermopen and, how hot does my oven run? And these are things that in culinary school, everything is already calibrated. The oven is set for the temperature that the recipe tells you to cook the thing at. But at home in an old oven or even a new oven, you might be off 10, 20, 30 degrees. And it makes a difference. And so now I have that skill set of especially when I'm working for clients and I'm working in their kitchens, which are often, newer, nicer kitchens than the one that I work in. But temperatures can be off. Stoves are all different.
They're gaslighting. The stove's gaslighting you.
Now I know. I'm calibrating their thermometers and I'm, calibrating their stove. And, it seems so simple, but it's just, even in culinary school, they didn't really teach us that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the last two editions before the one we did, they were done with the help of a test kitchen. And, they did a great job, but there was also a lot of, like, miscommunication between, like, the people that were working on the manuscript and the people that were testing the recipes. And so, yeah, I think that just in general, we wanted to collapse the distance between the kitchen and the manuscript.
It's kind of that
we were putting together.
Front of house, back of house rivalry, but a cookbook.
Or like a game of telephone where, so-and-so has to tell, this person and then they have to pass that along to another person. There was just too many steps in the process. So things would get lost and we really wanted to keep it super close. And we were in direct contact with you a lot just about little things going on, and which was super helpful. I think it made it such a better book because of that. But before we move on to officially interviewing you, Nicole, I wanted to introduce our recipe of the week for this week. So this week's show is about casseroles. And so we wanted everyone to make a broccoli cheese casserole. Such a classic casserole. It's on page 221 in the 2019 edition. As far as casseroles go, some of them are really actually quite complicated. This is a very easy recipe. And it has a delicious, what's the topping? It's like Romano cheese.
It's cornflakes and Romano cheese. But, it's a Mornay sauce, a bechamel made with cheese, and then the broccoli, and then it gets the topping. So, yeah.
Yeah, simple and good. No condensed soup in this one. You make your own simple white sauce. Very straightforward. It's not sad. It's good.
I'm pretty sure I brought a similar recipe to Thanksgiving at your place a couple of years ago, but mine has Cheez-Its on top.
Oh, that's such a good variation.
And it does use condensed soup, but I did make my own for that. I felt like I owed you better. But the recipe that I grew up with was definitely a can of, canned soup. But the Cheez-Its are the
crowning jewel.
Good.
Yeah.
Mentos straight from the jar. I mean, it's very colorful. But
that was definitely it was a point of contention, or, something we worried about the casserole recipes for the 2019 edition. Just because so many of those recipes, some of them dated back to like the 1943 edition and were made with, all of these condensed cream soups. And they were taken out for the 1997 edition.
Like the casserole recipes themselves were totally taken out? Or
a lot of them were. And then the ones that remained, they got like a freshly made, cream sauce as opposed to the condensed soups. So we try to split the difference by the recipe itself will have like the from scratch cream sauce. And then, in the head note, it's like, for those of you who want to, harken back to a previous era.
Store-bought is fine.
Yeah, store-bought is fine. Exactly. But yeah, please make the broccoli cheese casserole. Let us know how it goes. Share what you're making with us on Instagram. You can tag us at The Joy of Cooking. We'd love to see what you're making, and we will make it as well. We'll cook along with you. All right, Nicole, before you met us, did you grow up with Joy of Cooking, or did you know about it? What was your relationship with Joy of Cooking before you knew us?
So I knew about the Joy of Cooking. Our household, I don't think, was a Joy of Cooking house. I remember the red and white checked Betty Crocker binder that I think my mom received as a wedding gift. Mm-hmm. And I don't really remember her cooking from it very often, but I do remember all of the other recipes that she used that were just stuffed in the pages. And, that was the book that she gave me when I got married. But I don't have an emotional connection to that book other than the memory of seeing it, on my shelf. I'm not sure when I came across The Joy of Cooking, but I know that I was very aware of it. I had a copy of it. I used it. But all of that kind of came later. I think when I got married, my husband and I, we had moved to Pennsylvania, and we really neither of us knew anybody there. And a lot of my creative energy went from kind of art making to cooking. And I think I acquired an older copy. I'm not even sure which one, honestly, at some point from the library, and never returned it. Sorry, Pittsburgh. I don't have it anymore, so maybe I sent it back. But yeah, at some point it just kind of, it found me, I guess. And, now I see it everywhere, and I feel such a sense of pride when I do. And yeah. That's awesome.
Do any of the recipes that it doesn't have to be a recipe you tested, but it could just be a recipe you make a lot now. But do any of the recipes in the book stand out to you as favorites or things you will go to just automatically?
I don't think there's any one recipe in particular, but I think I refer to The Joy of Cooking, at least for work. It's always my first stop. Mm-hmm. Anytime I'm thinking about making something, the first place I look is, and this edition in particular, because I know how well it was tested, and I really trust these recipes. It's always my first stop. Even if it's something basic that is going to be doctored up later in some different way. I feel like when it comes to baked goods, I rely on The Joy of Cooking pretty heavily. I'm not a great baker, and I've just never really failed with anything I've baked out of this book. I've actually never, I can't say I've ever had a recipe I didn't like.
That's awesome.
That didn't turn out. And
that's a glowing testimonial.
Well, like I said, I got the recipes that you had already tested.
Right.
So.
True. We try not to give you any bad ones.
They're not paying me to say this.
No.
we hid the bad ones.
The next one.
Yeah, no need to test this one.
Outtakes. So you do use Joy in your day job then?
I do,
just kind of reference how to make something?
Very often. Recently, I made brisket for the first time. I'd never made brisket in my entire life. And I really had it in me. I was like, I really want to make you guys a brisket. And they're like, okay, let's do some brisket. So I I referred to the recipe in The Joy of Cooking, and then I kind of, I looked at other books that they had and then the internet, and I didn't end up going with any one recipe, but it was really helpful as a starting point to see, well, what is the technique? And then this one's braised in more liquid, this one's more of a dry, long roast, and then kind of put them all together. So, yeah, I mean, that's just one example, but when I'm bored with the same salad dressing that I always make, I will always flip through and figure out, there's a bunch in there that I haven't made, so try something new. And yeah, I think it's a great starting point, and I often am satisfied. I'm like, this is actually exactly what I want to make, and then I just stick with that one. But that book is pretty much always out on the counter at work.
That's so awesome. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
What are some of the most requested meals that you make for the family you work for?
So like I mentioned, they have 2 young kids who have, pretty standard kid tastes that are always fluctuating. So I will say that, so there's 2 kids. One is 6, one is 4.5. 6-year-old loves grilled cheese sandwiches, although it kind of waxes and wanes. One thing I will say about the clients that I work for is that the parents both have celiac, and so there's no gluten in their house, and the kids don't. So I make a lot of jokes about being their fairy gluten mother, and they come to my house and I give them grilled cheese and, things that they can't have at home. And so as far as the kids are concerned, it's kind of grilled cheese sandwiches and pasta. Every week I make a big salad for the week, and I try to change it up. There's always some protein. It's usually chicken, which can get, a little repetitive. So I do try to mix it up with that. But consistently every week I'm making a huge salad for the week that's available all week long, a jar of some kind of dressing. It's typically just kind of a mustard vinaigrette with some honey or maple, some kind of roasted chicken or protein. And then a lot of times, I think my favorite weeks are the weeks where I get asked to make a dish that they're going to take with them somewhere. So, like, for example, last week, the family went on vacation to a cabin with a couple of other families, and they said, will you make us some lasagnas? Will you make us a vegetarian lasagna and a meat lasagna? And so I made a big, huge batch of this lamb ragu, and then I made a big batch of a mushroom ragu, and I had this assembly line. And this is my favorite kind of cooking because it's a lot of effort, but you also get a lot of food for it, and it freezes really well. And, I made them a Basque cheesecake and a huge salad to take. And again, because I love cooking, because I love feeding people, knowing that I'm feeding a huge group of people, it makes me feel even better. And just hearing the comments, everybody loved lasagna. This feels really good. So
yeah, that sounds delicious. That makes me so hungry. It's like 5:30 right now, and I'm like, okay.
Well, there was enough leftovers that I made myself a lasagna as well. So there's one in my freezer.
Rad.
Come over.
What are your favorite things to cook for yourself?
I am relearning that, actually. Learning to cook for myself again has been tricky. I often actually will just I end up making more food for my clients than they can even eat. So I often will take some home for myself, or, so I'm kind of cooking what I like too, as well as what they want. But my favorite things to cook have always been, the things that don't need a recipe, the things that are more process oriented, like standing over the stove and making a risotto, or things that I grew up cooking that are all by sense, like a big pot of ragu where you just kind of add it until things taste right. Things that have, I guess, they take a lot of effort and labor initially, but the payoff is great because you end up with something that you can use in all these different ways. So, I mean, soups and sauces and just a kettle of food over a fire feels right to me.
Yeah. And we've talked about this a little bit, but like, it's kind of a challenge to cook for just one person.
Oh my
So
God,
like,
so hard.
how do you tackle that? How do you like feed yourself without overwhelming with so much food?
It's really hard. I wish I had a good answer for that. I think cooking for one, especially when you've been cooking all day and you just want to come home. And I ordered so much pizza when I was testing for you guys. There's a lot of takeout involved, but
Relatable.
I think I have some weeks where I'm better at it than others. And then I have some weeks where it's like I'll stock my fridge at the beginning of the week and then not eat any of it. I am trying to be better about if I do make a big batch of something, just inviting random people over and say, hey, I just made a pot of beans. If you want beans,
Off the street.
come. I mean, maybe next week. Yeah. Or I'm really inspired to have this friend, Lauren, and she's also single and has a CSA subscription, and like nobody can eat that much broccoli or that many cucumbers in the summer. So I thought it was so sweet. She'll just have sort of like a salad party where she'll make the base of the salad or stir fry, and then people can come and kind of like BYOP, bring your own protein. and it just turns into this really low pressure way to have, it's not even a dinner party. It's just people need to eat. And I really identify with that and want to do more of that.
I aspire to that kind
Same.
of entertaining. I feel like I agonize a little bit when we're entertaining and really want to make something special and make it a big deal. But then that adds the stress onto you. And
yeah. And I think about this a lot because as long as I've known you guys, I realized I've never had you over for dinner that wasn't a party or something. And I think a lot of it is that pressure of, and I do like entertaining, but there's the pressure of cooking well, especially for people that know food, and having everything be perfect and kind of being this perfect host instead of just treating it like dinner,
Well, we love beans, rice and
love
beans.
Yeah, that definitely goes both ways. As co-authors of The Joy of Cooking, you just kind of feel like everything has to, I don't know. I mean,
You have to impress. You feel like we have to be impressive with our cooking.
I guess. I don't know. At least competent.
Yeah. Well, I think it's maybe a little bit that, but it's also just wanting to get to flex your muscles a little. You know what I mean? Like flex your culinary muscles and make something you don't make every day, like
Right.
lasagna. Like we don't make lasagna very often because this is the two of us, and we'll freeze it, but it doesn't feel as special. Like when you have
It's never the
over.
same either. If you throw it in the freezer.
Yeah, actually, lasagna is one of those. I guess it's not a crutch, but it feels like a crutch. Like for me, I don't know why.
Just lasagna.
It's just, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can make fresh pasta. I don't have to I don't even have to cut the pasta. I could just lay it in there, and then I have this ragu that I spent a day cooking, and it just makes it easy. Mm-hmm. You're not cooking anything a la minute, which is something that I'm sure I've had some nightmares about that.
Some stress dreams about
stress dreams
short order
about,
cooking.
doing short order cooking for people that I care about and maybe not want to impress, but just don't want to mess up in front of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can be stressful. It can be very
Let's
stressful.
do more impromptu dinners.
Absolutely.
Not dinner parties, just dinners.
Yeah. I think I wanted to mention too, I feel like at least I've always loved cooking. When I was young, I did want to be a chef, but my mom was such a neat freak about the kitchen that I wasn't really allowed to cook until I moved out, had my own kitchen. But I grew up watching, after the Saturday morning cartoons, it was the Martha Stewart living show. And I was obsessed with all of my mom's issues of Good Housekeeping and Woman's Day magazine. And there was all this pressure to, not pressure, like it was an interest of mine, a genuine interest of mine, but it was, I want to host dinner parties and not just, I want to make dinner. And that's definitely evolved as I've gotten older and more comfortable and cooking and things like that. But I do love the rush of like a perfectly timed Thanksgiving but I also recognize that my life doesn't really fit that anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't know that it ever really did, but I still care about putting good food on the table, even if it's just my table and it's just for me. So yeah, it's a puzzle. It's always getting fit together in different ways.
After all of that, being able to carve into a perfectly cooked turkey in front of a bunch of people is kind of exhilarating.
Oh, the rush. The rush. For a disorganized person like me, getting all the timing right, and the sweet potatoes and the broccoli casserole. And
Yeah.
This might say more about me and how boring I am. I don't know.
No, I
mean, I think
totally
you're
good
good
company.
No sky.
Turkey, yes.
Turkey day, T minus 3 hours. Let's go, team.
All right. So now we're going to answer the question that we got this week. Each week we choose a topic to tackle based on caller suggestions. And this week we're talking about casseroles. Sarah, can you read the question?
Yeah, this is pretty exciting for me because it's from my uncle and it's about my grandma. And so it feels really special. I know Dirk read it last week, but because I wasn't here, but and I also love that my uncle calls it my podcast, but it's actually your guys'.
Oh, it's your podcast too.
But he says, okay, so I'm a big fan of Sarah's podcast, and it really got me thinking about cooking memories. I remembered my mother, which is my grandmother, a true
Improvisational?
Thank you. Cook, teaching me how to make eggplant casserole when I first moved into my small adobe house in Katati in 1970. I tried to find her exact recipe in Joy of Cooking, but it wasn't there. She probably combined elements of different recipes, as she often did. She gave me a heavy cast iron pot, and I'd layer it with sliced eggplant. Any idea of this casserole recipe? Dave Stone, Petaluma, California. And I just have to say that, like, my grandma, she did cook that way. Like, she would just kind of make things up. But I love that he had this memory that I didn't even know about, and I wouldn't have known about it except for that you guys have this podcast. So thanks. And do you know what recipe it is?
It's a tough one, actually. It was tougher than I thought it would be when Dirk read it last week. So yeah, I guess it kind of just depends on what edition she might have been working from. Yeah, like the 1963 and the 1975 editions, they only have a few recipes. You know, they were Marianne's editions, and she made a lot of changes after taking over the book from Irma. So yeah, the 1963 edition has just the scalloped eggplant recipe. And then the 1975 also has a moussaka recipe. It seems like he would probably remember moussaka for more than just having like layers of sliced eggplant, because there's a lot going on in there. So Irma's editions, like the 1951 edition was the last one that she, was involved with, and there are so many freaking eggplant recipes in there. It is ridiculous. And almost all of them involve onions and green bell pepper and tomato, like in some form. There's an eggplant creole recipe that has, so it's eggplant that's sliced and then it's sauteed, and then tomatoes are sauteed separately, and then it's layered in a baking dish, and then it's got cheese on top. The scalloped eggplant, sometimes it's diced, sometimes it's sliced. Those are parboiled. I feel like that's really weird.
That's an odd.
Yeah, like
parboiling.
You go further back in Joy of Cooking editions, and there's more of that. Like in the 31, I don't think there was the 1931 edition. I don't think that there was an eggplant recipe that did not involve actually like taking the pulp out and then cooking it, either parboiling it or sautéing it before adding it back to the eggplant as like a kind of
like a case,
stuffed, as a case. But yeah, let's see.
I don't know about how I feel about boiling eggplant. That just doesn't. It seems like it would absorb a lot of water.
Yeah.
Was canned eggplant a thing? Was that a vegetable that was ever canned?
I don't
Put
know.
it in a can, and there would be slices.
But
I don't know.
Why would you have to par cook it at all if it was canned?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird.
True.
There's a creamed shrimps and celery eggplant or cucumber au gratin.
Whoa.
That's a
Wait,
wild
say all
ride.
those ingredients again. Say that again.
It's like three different options. So it's creamed shrimps, and celery, eggplant, or cucumber au gratin.
Wait, eggplant or cucumber?
Yeah, I know. It's
Same.
just whatever you want. Just throw it in
Do
there.
your thing.
Do it. Yeah.
Put some crumbs on it and throw it under a broiler, I guess.
More of a casserole than a casserole.
One sliced layered eggplant dish that I did find that was pretty odd. Layered with slices of green bell pepper, of course, tomato, onion, all the usual suspects. You bake that, but then you top it with split wieners or frankfurters that have been spread with mustard or horseradish.
Whoa.
And then I guess you broil it. You bake it further. I feel like I would broil that. Yeah, no, lots of tomato, green bell
That sounds
pepper.
fun.
Yeah, actually, I feel like I would eat that. It's like kind of smoky, salty. Yeah, I could see it.
Oh yeah, and then there, like in the 51 edition, there's also a variation on scalloped eggplant that adds oysters. So you layer like gently cooked oysters. You've taken them out like a pint of oysters. You gently cook them until like they start to turn opaque, and then you layer them in between like in between the eggplant slices, and yeah.
That one not fun.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not as quite as open-minded as Irma was about pairing eggplant with things.
So I guess, moral of the story is we would know more if we could find out what edition.
Is the Moussaka recipe in the newest edition?
Yes.
It is.
Okay, cool.
It's been in the last four editions.
I definitely remember testing that one too and really enjoying it.
It's delicious. It's a project.
Yeah, it was, but it was, I remember when I was testing for you guys, I was thinking before I started that I would save so much money on groceries because I would just have food around all the time. But because of the way we did it in these sort of batches, when I remember when we did Moussaka, we also did, similar recipes. It was casserole week. And then it was, like one can only eat so many casseroles.
I beg to differ.
True.
It's time to make friends with your neighbors.
Yeah, right. I did think about putting a refrigerator out on the corner, before the free fridge project was a thing. But I do remember that recipe, and it was very good.
Yeah.
The 1997 edition had a moussaka recipe that called for a bechamel that was made with yogurt and olive oil.
Wait, so like in addition to, did it have milk as well and yogurt was whisked in or just yogurt?
That feels like a low-fat version. Like
It was quote unquote a modern bechamel is what
like cottage cheese and lasagna. Fat-free cottage cheese.
Oh.
I mean, anything. I grew up in the South, and in my family, anything could be a casserole.
Yeah,
because
I want to know your favorite casseroles because you're like, to me, you're like casserole queen. You're the only person I know that grew up eating them.
Yeah. So my family, I grew up in the South, and I grew up going to church a lot. And casserole, I feel like I associate very strongly with going to church because after church every Sunday, my family would go to my great-grandmother's house, and she and my grandmother would have cooked a giant spread for the whole family. It was really awesome. They, in hindsight, I'm like, wow, they worked so much. Like they went to the early church service so that they could come home in time to like finish lunch for 10 to 15 people every week.
Every Sunday.
Every single Sunday.
That's amazing.
For so decades. Like before I was born, and then, still when I go home, we will have Sunday lunch.
I love that.
And it was rad, but there would always be at least one casserole, and anything could be a casserole. Like there was chicken casserole. That was a favorite. There was sausage casserole. So like, not like kielbasa sausage, like breakfast sausage, like ground, kind of ground sausage. That was delicious. I really love a squash casserole, like a yellow squash casserole with cheddar cheese in it. That is a top tier casserole.
Yeah, you really brought me around on that one. It's
solid.
Delicious.
Yeah, with like a Ritz cracker crumb topping. It's so good. Butter. It's a little bit sweet. Yeah, or Cheez-Its. I like that idea a lot. But yeah, we would always have like sweet potato casserole or just whatever could be a casserole.
What was the breakfast sausage casserole? What was in that?
Man, I never made it myself. I feel like
Please tell me there were hash browns in there.
no, there were. It wasn't like a theme. It wasn't like
No
breakfast
potatoes.
themed. There was no potatoes. It was creamy. So it must have had soup, like one of the canned soups or something in it. I don't fully know, but it had a crumb topping, so it had that bit of crunchy on top.
It's a hallmark of a good casserole is you're not really sure.
Don't ask questions.
We're gonna need to ask your mom about that.
Yeah, I can call my grandma this week and ask her what the deal is with that. I feel like maybe that one also had macaroni in it.
Oh,
like
wow.
just elbow pasta and
breakfast sausage.
Yeah.
This is sounding really familiar. So I have a friend, had a friend who we would do a pre-Thanksgiving Turkey Day thing every year. And his family is in North Carolina, and he would always bring this sausage casserole that was, it sounds like it might have been similar, but it had breakfast sausage in it. And I was like, why are you bringing breakfast sausage to Thanksgiving? He's like, trust me, it's delicious. And it really was. And so that was and it had a funny name. I can't remember what it was. If I heard it, I would know it, but
I don't remember it being called anything other than just sausage casserole, but all of those recipes would be passed like through the grapevine, through like
Right.
church cookbooks.
Right.
Those
The little
community cookbooks.
plastic bound things you would buy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they all like have mostly the same recipes in
Right.
them. But
it.
yeah, sausage casserole. I'm sure everybody, like so many people must make that because of those church cookbooks. And like as an adult making casseroles, it's just the two of us in our household. So we don't ever need to make that much food. But I remember the first time I made a casserole, I was like, this is actually really time consuming. I always thought of it as a way of saving time, but it's totally not. It's a way of cooking a lot of food for a lot
crowd.
of people.
Right.
So it has like it's accomplishing a different goal than saving time. But
Hitting all the 4 food groups in one
exactly.
one dish.
Yeah, even with the condensed soups, you're really not. I mean, you're saving some time, obviously, but yeah, I feel like a lot of that time it's like going into the baking of it, or
Yeah, it takes a long
something.
time to bake.
All the parts you have to prep beforehand.
Right.
But it's kind of, in a way, I was thinking about it, it's almost like a precursor to a dump meal because you just take all the components and mix them together, put them in a dish or layer them and then bake it. So it's kind of just, you throw everything in.
No, dump meals, that's so 2010s. I don't know.
Oh, they're still out there.
Oh, they are definitely still out there.
I think
Never
they
mind.
just call them like sheet pan recipes now. It's the same thing.
Oh, I
they're-
kind of put that in a different category, I guess, because it's like, okay, throw it on a sheet pan. I think of dumping, like putting it in a slow cooker.
Or throw it in an Instant Pot,
Yeah, or Instant Pot.
They're just looking for time. Like they're just like, it's fast.
Yeah.
It's fast. That's all I want.
Oh yeah, sheet pan is definitely like it's in the same genus, different species, something like that.
Yeah, different,
Cinematic universe.
different cooking technique. Yeah, it's a dry heat.
It's a dry heat. Okay, I think we have covered that as best as we can.
Apologies to your uncle.
I think he's going to be stoked. I think the Moussaka is going to nail it. I do.
Oh, he's just going to go after that scallop take plant with the oysters, whatever.
Ooh, I don't know, man.
Not quite sure about that.
If you have a topic, ingredient, or joy story to share, call our hotline at 503-395-8858. Leave us a message or send us a text, although we would love it if you left us an actual voice message. That would be so rad because no one wants to talk on the phone, I guess. We would love to hear from you. And next week's topic comes from our caller.
This is a tag, so it's going to be me talking. I was shopping recently looking for shallots, and they were out. I bought pearl onions instead. Do you think this is a good replacement, or do you have a better one? And do you have any recipes with pearl onions?
Great question. We will tackle that next week. All right. What is everybody going to cook this week? What are we excited about, John?
Well, I don't know. I feel like we cooked this not so long ago. I'm hoping that we're not repeating it on the podcast, but there's this soup. It's called Roberto. It was published in The New Yorker. It's a recipe by Helen Rosner. And we just recently got some really nice spicy Italian sausage from a local butcher. And so, yeah, it's really great it really shines in the soup. And it's got white beans, it's got kale, it's got
some tomato.
Yeah,
not a ton of tomato, but
not a ton.
some.
Yeah.
And then what else? I feel like we missed something. I don't know. It's kind of got an Italian-ishness to it. That's really delightful. And it's really versatile too, because like we have some like mature spinach at home that we could throw in instead of kale, or like you can use other like borlotti beans or cranberry beans instead of the white beans. So it's very adaptable to whatever you have on hand.
Yeah, we also got some spigarello in our CSA. Another Italian dish that I was kind of have a hankering for is Utica greens. I'm trying to remember the process on that.
You saute the greens with onion and
with
garlic.
onion, yeah. And then you pop it in the oven with a breadcrumb Parmesan topping. And it's also got some pickled chilies in there too.
Oh yeah, the pickled chilies make it.
Yeah.
That like the little pops of acidity are so delicious in there. But yeah, you broil it with the cheesy breadcrumb topping, and it's so delicious.
It's almost a casserole.
Breadcrumbs, automatic casserole.
Yeah, everything.
Au gratin.
We desperately need to use some carrots. We're getting carrots every time in our CSA at this point in the year. So do either of you have any favorite carrot things that you like to make?
I feel like I just end up roasting them and eating them like right off the sheet pan. They don't even make it into the fridge. I love carrots.
That's such a solid way to do it because they get nice and sweet.
Yeah.
Well, there's that Benihana dressing, that Japanese steakhouse dressing or whatever.
That's what I was going to say. Like the miso ginger dressing, we'll do that. Like shred the carrots on the cheese grater and do that. Adeline loves that, so that's what I tend to do.
Maybe we could toss the roasted carrots with the carrot sauce.
Whoa. Meta.
Whoa.
Carrotception.
Carrotception. I'm going to have to think about that.
We also make a carrot salad. It's like the French carrot salad.
Yeah.
That's just grated carrots and then a little bit of oil, a little bit of lemon
So good.
juice. And I always add Dijon mustard to it because I love Dijon mustard, but it's a favorite.
I cook a lot of carrots, but I end up just roasting them and then thinking, oh, there's roasted carrots for the week. This is usually at work. And then I think I'll have to work those into recipes later on. And then they're gone the next day.
Yeah, you
Get
just eat
snacked
them.
on. I did have a really good, I've been thinking about this because I made mashed potatoes this week for my 6-year-old at work. It's one of the things she'll eat. And I was thinking back to this taco I had back in LA that was a flour tortilla, cheesy mashed potatoes, and a carrot slaw that was on top. And so the acidic carrot slaw cuts the fat of the potatoes. So it's almost like a double-decker taco.
Yum.
With flour tortilla with a crunchy corn tortilla, cheese layer,
Oh, wow.
mashed potatoes, carrot slaw with a ton of cilantro and lime juice. So
That sounds rad.
Yeah.
it's been on my mind to make it. So feel free to
Yeah, I might
Run with
might
that.
crib that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you going to make this week, Sarah?
Well, I have a special request from my daughter, which is, well, I think on my website it's called like world famous meatloaf or something, but it's the meatloaf I make for Adeline, and it's it's a mix of ketchup and our barbecue sauce, and then it has breadcrumbs that you soak in milk. And so it's just like this really nice meatloaf, but I make them in little tiny ones for her. And so, when she has a craving for that, it's like, she's like, Mom, meatloaf time. So that's what I have on the agenda.
That sounds lovely. I love the little individual meatloaves instead of the one big because you get a better sauce to
Yeah,
meatloaf
totally.
ratio.
Yeah.
and the caramelization on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why meatloaf gets such a bad rap. It's just a meatball.
It's delicious.
That's easier to cook.
Yeah.
but there's something. I love meatloaf.
I just like the idea that there is a meatloaf time.
Yeah, it's time for meatloaf.
Time for meatloaf.
Thanks for listening to the Joy of Cooking podcast. Before we go, show some love for your favorite podcast by subscribing to the show and leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts and iTunes. Follow us at joyofcooking.substack.com and on Instagram at thejoyofcooking. Stay tuned for next week where we'll tackle shallots. Call in with questions, hopes, history, or where you find joy in the kitchen. Our number is 503-395-8858. That's 503-395-8858.
And we could not do this without our fantastic team at Joy of Creation Production House. Thank you to Dave Drusky, my super rad brother, our production coordinator, and Haley Bowers, our audio engineer. Bye, everybody.